Hey there, world. I'm Dan Shaheen. Welcome to Comic Book News. It's another live stream discussion. Today, we're going to talk about variant comics. Yeah, you've heard this discussion a million times before, right? Wrong. Not from such industry luminaries as you're about to talk to. These are guys who make their money buying, selling, making comics in some way or another. So they really have a vested interest in this. They think a lot about it. It's really important to them. So without further ado, let's introduce to the call multiple time contributor, comics retailer, journalist for Comic Shop News, all around smart guy about comic books, Cliff Biggers. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. Glad to be here.
Joining us again, I don't think he's done a panel, but we did a one-on-one interview. He's the hardest working indie cartoonist. Welcome, Andrew Neal.
What's up, Dan? How you doing?
Andrew's the creator of Meeting Comics, formerly self-published, now out from Outhouse Books. Get yours in stores soon.
Correct.
Last but not least, first-time contributor to this program, Callum Johnston of Strange Adventures. Oh, hey, Callum, great to see you.
This should be done like those old Christmas specials where everyone just assumed everyone was living nearby. Oh, hi.
Oh, yeah, we're just dropping in for a little impromptu variant conversation.
For sure.
Guys, so, variant comics, it's a crazy thing, right? They've been around for a long time. I mean, if you want to talk what's a variant, you could go all the way back to like reprints with new covers on it. That might be considered a variant cover on a comic, but I think what we're talking about is comics that came out at one time with multiple covers. And in all my research, the stuff that I've been able to find as the first one, and please correct me if I'm wrong, would be John Byrne's Man of Steel #1. Which had a direct market cover and a newsstand cover.
Yeah, it's the first
Cliff,
one.
do you remember that? Were you selling comics at that time?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was. See, I had thought the first one was that Legends of the Dark Knight #1, which had it shipped with 4 different solid color covers. I basically printed on different colors of paper, but I thought that predated the John Byrne cover. That seemed to be the first one I remembered, and DC introduced that at the last minute because the orders were so high for the book. Reportedly, they were afraid that stores wouldn't sell through, so they did the multicolored covers, hoping people would pick up more than one.
Huh. Well, in my research seems to point that the first one was Man of Steel, but the distinction being that it was a direct market version and a newsstand version, whereas Dark Knight Returns, I believe, was a direct market only comic that had multiple covers. So,
yeah.
Is that how you remember it, Callum?
Yes, but I'm again.
You may be right. I think you may be right about the date. I was just taking a look, and it looks like that is probably correct.
Mm-hmm.
So that began a long saga, right? They looked at that and they said, Man of Steel, I remember that got a lot of, that got some pop, right? That was, they got a cover story on Time Magazine. So there were people looking for that. And somewhere a light bulb went on to somebody that said, hey man, there's comic book collectors. Let's do 2 different covers. And I think that sparked a big success, and the rest is history, positive or negative. So that's what we're here to discuss today. In researching this, by the way, I found some great stuff. We'll talk about in an article. I found the history of variant covers that I read up to try and get a little bit more info on the subject. What I want to talk about is first of all, to the retailers here. Let's start with Callum. How do you treat variants in your store, just in general?
It really depends on the kind of variant. If it's an open order one, we usually choose the cover we like better. With DC's recent run, in many cases, it's going to be what they would call the A cover or the regular cover because it has the logo on it. So if you're going to put it on the rack, people can find it and see it. There are occasions where they'd have an artist doing a variant cover that really was striking, some of the Josh Middleton stuff. So that's going to be the one that you want to order more of. Then there's all kinds of different variants that you have to, meet different thresholds for, ratio variants, meet and exceed. So it varies. Sorry to use that term. Depending on the variant. So in most cases, they're out on the racks, although we also try and just get one cover, because it also leads to confusion, where we've had many parents bring up the same issue of My Little Pony because the number's very small, but the two covers are very different, and they're wanting to buy them for their kids. And luckily, we usually are able to stop them, go, oh, this is the same one, you want a different one from this. And their question is usually, why do they do that?
I see. So you're talking about the regular version of My Little Pony ships with multiple covers these days.
Yes, and those are variants, because there are some people in some stores, I'm sure, who want all of them. We used to have them with the G.I. Joe and the Transformers collectors. They wanted all the covers, so you had to make sure you ordered them. And IDW tends to do the threshold variants or ratio variants, where it's order 10, you get one of these, or order 25, you get one of these. So they're at least somewhat straightforward, and they often even have the ratio in their title. Transformers 51 1 in 10 variant.
Right.
So it really depends on which variant, what kind you're talking about. We're just trying to sell comics.
Sure, that's an interesting one. I didn't think about, the market confusion and people potentially buying twice on something like My Little Pony is a good point. Cliff Biggers, how do you treat variants in your store?
Same thing. It depends on the variant. If it's DC variants where we can order what we want, both covers are out there, they go out at cover price. An incentive variant is priced higher, particularly if it was something that required us to stretch slightly. If we could only sell 20 copies of the book and we decided it was worth gambling on that 1 in 25, we're going to have to price it a little bit higher to try to compensate for the extra copies that got eaten to help us to qualify for that. Sometimes we do on some of these variants, we will do an incentive where if you buy this variant, you get the regular cover for free, just as a chance to try to help make that variant a little bit more affordable and to make use of those extra copies that we had to order to qualify for it. We have found that some out of comics market titles that appeal beyond the market, for example, Kiss. We don't have a strong Kiss audience. It doesn't sell in huge quantities, but we have Kiss customers who have been collecting Kiss material for years, and they still want every cover. Mm-hmm. So we have to stretch to qualify for those, and they're aware we're going to have to charge more for that to qualify. But that's okay, because they want that. They don't want to miss that cover.
Right. So it brings up an interest.
The worst for us are the covers where we have to, in order to order any of it, we have to qualify by matching our order to a book we ordered several months ago. And it gets even more complicated if that book we're trying to match it to was in turn incentivized to qualify for variants for a book several months before that. Suddenly we get this degree of exponential increase where we simply can't qualify because we have to order 3, 4, 5 times what we can sell. But a new store that wasn't selling this book, that only moves 5 copies of any title to start with, can qualify very easily because their incentive gate is so low.
Right. And then the lack of... Sorry, Callum.
Sorry, it creates sometimes a very uneven field where you can be a very strong supporter for a title, X-Force or Superman or Action or whatever, and then an incentive variant comes out that you can't even qualify for because you've done well with the book.
You're penalized.
You can't afford to do 200% of a top seller, whereas a guy down the street can no problem do that and get the more sought after cover. So in many cases, retailers, I think, want to ask the publishers, what is your plan for this? Why are you doing it in this way? And how does it make sense for stores to get this cool cover by having to order more than they need of the regular cover, which is, in some cases less desirable. Right. So it just, is it purely to, well, we're just trying to get copies in your store? Like there's other ways to do that.
Right. Well, and then the waste built into it, the lack of SRP, and so the lack of transparency and the lack of understanding for the customer of how much it actually costs you to get this comic could lead to, people thinking you're price gouging or whatever without understanding at all. Andrew Neil, you used to sell comics for a living, man, and you were around for this variant thing. So how do you avoid that perception of being the day one flipper comic book guy?
I mostly didn't mess with them. There were a few exceptions. There were things that I would order and put out at higher than cover price, but for a long time, I honestly just threw everything out on the racks at cover price. Sometimes I would throw them online to sell, but there were many years where I didn't sell anything new in the store at above cover price. I just didn't like the perception that something brand new was marked up, and we had lots and lots of casual customers and kids. We were less of a collectible store than we were, say, a family bookstore that happened to be focused on comics. So for me, the money that I would have made on those covers, I felt like didn't make up for what I was losing. And I stopped selling them at more than cover price, specifically because of parents and kids coming in and the parents saying, oh, this isn't a kid's store. You know, there was a point at which I went back on that later with some specific titles, but for the most part, I wasn't a huge fan of them in the store. Generally.
Right. You know, I had a similar feeling. I didn't like the idea of marking a brand new comic up on day one. I used them as rewards to my regular customers who might like a certain cover or something else in lieu of discounting or other types of things. To me, it was a nice, as long as I didn't have to stretch and spend more money than I wanted to on stuff I couldn't sell. I felt like it was an okay thing. I never thought about the wrinkle that Callum mentioned, that you're a victim of your own success if you do try.
For certain ones.
Yes, right. The match two on top of a match two type situation.
What we refer to in our store as a gated variant, that we are not allowed to sell them unless we order a certain quantity that opens the gates for that particular book for us. And when that happens, then we can order those books, but that gate can be a very costly gate to open. And we're not the only market that sells variant covers. TV Guide, Entertainment Weekly, Sports Illustrated, Rolling Stone Magazine have all offered variant covers at one time or another. We are, however, the only market where retailers are expected to order more quantities of something in order to get that cover. And all those other markets, those variants are offered in more or less equal quantities to stores. We're the only ones who have to jump through hoops to qualify for what is a manufactured collectible that is, truth to be told, almost always at its highest value the day it comes out and decreases in value every day thereafter.
Right.
They're really premiums. They're like the kinds of things you'd have at the newsstand where you're encouraging, you know, the drugstore to sell more copies because you're going to give them a prize. You know, that's what these are. They're sales incentives. And I wish we were able to get some publisher insight about the other kinds of variants that they offer. Like the match and exceed, it's obvious they're purely just trying to make us order more copies to have them on the shelf.
Right.
But when publishers offer what's called FOC variants, where FOC stands for final order cutoff, where retailers are putting in their final orders with the distributors, and then the publishers are going to set their print runs. Sometimes they're offering another cover at FOC, and there's not even an image. So this is coming out in 2 weeks' time. There's a third cover for Firefly. We probably have some collectors who might want it. We feel we've got to order a couple, sometimes a lot, sometimes a few, and we have no clue. And there's not even a way to promote it to our customers because we don't even have the image. And, you know,
right.
Publishers, like, why do you do an FOC variant without having the information? Like, you haven't even promoted it to your readers. You know?
Well, what is your feeling? I mean, beyond just a naked cash grab, is there any possible rational explanation beyond that?
Well, there's more facings.
Yeah, I think there once was. I think that at one point they felt like it created more excitement for a book if there were multiple covers out there, and early on perhaps it did, but I don't think it does now. I have seen some of my customers who were very much the variant-oriented customer early on who are now just disgusted by the entire thing because they said, you know, I added it up and of the like 250 different variant covers I've bought in the past few years, only like 3 of them have ever even held their value, and yet so many of the speculator sites encourage them to go for that variant cover, even though the price tends to fall later on because it's driven high by the speculator site. A lot of the variants, there are formulas that various stores use for a 1 in 10 or a 1 in 25 or a 1 in 50 variant. When you add something like a 1 in 1,000 variant and a 1 in 2,000 variant, you're either telling the store spend your entire rent budget for the month on this comic, or you're telling the consumer this is going to be so ultra rare that it's worth this small fortune, and it's not. I remember the Steve Ditko cover for, I think it was Spider-Man 700. Was that it? I think it was 700, where they used an unused Ditko cover from Amazing Fantasy 15, which had been published previously, but not as the cover of a comic. And when they did that, the price was exorbitant, $1,500, $1,800 when it came out. Now it's a small fraction of that price.
Sometimes.
Oh, I will mention, by the way, in honor of this show, I'm wearing a variant Superman T-shirt that Target can't give me any extra for when I bought it at Target last fall. It was the same price as the regular Superman shirt. I did not have to buy 10 shirts to buy this shirt. It was an amazing deal. I just walked in, paid the same price, and left with the shirt.
Those really high-end variants that Marvel and DC and some other publishers might be offering that are 500 and 1,000 copies, I think are subsidizing the stores that are ordering exclusive covers. If you're having to order 2,000 or 3,000 of your own Catwoman 100 or Detective 1,000 or Spider-Man #1, having these as an extra incentive is a little carrot to try and convince stores to order an exclusive cover. That's a whole other section of variants.
100 offered an exclusive cover. I think that predated Marvel doing exclusive. I may be wrong. You could be right there, but that one goes back to
another part of it.
Yeah.
Okay, fellas, this is where I want to bring in Andrew Neal, because this is where we start to talk about some of the grift, the potential grift behind this stuff. I'm not accusing Andrew of grift. What I'm saying is that there's a potential whenever you're dealing in this hot instant collectibles market, there's a perception of grift, even if it's strictly market mechanics working behind it. So Andrew Neal, tell us a little bit about the Ghost variant program that you and Callum were a part of, what you were trying to do and what you think you accomplished.
All right, yeah. So Cal touched briefly on the idea of exclusive covers. At the time, exclusive comic covers tended to be things that were commissioned by a specific store to sell in a specific store, and they were usually terrible. Usually, a non-professional artist would do the cover. It was someone who was maybe a friend of the store. The retailer would say, "Hey, I'll give you some store credit if you draw me a cover for this." The other options were frequently, "Hey, we can do an exclusive store cover with the inks with no colors, or the pencils before they've been inked, or no logo on it." And basically, it was just a way to create garbage for a store to have something that they could say was their own and have their logo on it.
And from a publisher's point of view, why would they want to be purchased? Why would they want to do something like that? Why would I want
more copies of the comic? I mean, it was a way for publishers to move more, and especially for the smaller publishers where every couple hundred was a significant percentage of the print run. You could see all kinds of ugly garbage out there that was just, there wasn't really any market for it. It was a way for a store to have a thing that was theirs, but generally speaking, it was poorly executed. Our idea, and the person who came up with the idea was Pete Dolan from Main Street Comics, was that we do a shared exclusive cover for our stores and have it be good. That was one of the innovations, was to actually spend money to get professionals to do the cover. The second innovation was that we wouldn't tell anyone we were doing it until it came out, and that was the far and away the hardest part to convince the publishers about. They were happy to take our money, but they very much wanted to say, well, why don't you want to tell the world you have this thing? And the hope was that it would be such a surprise that people would just be excited once it dropped and rush to get it, and it worked.
Create some buzz.
But that's basically what it was. It went well. It went for
what was the first Ghost variant?
It was Walking Dead, I think 101, right, Cal?
Yeah.
Okay. So Walking Dead 100. Yeah. Pete's original idea was Walking Dead 100, which was I think scheduled to have a bunch of variant covers already. So we waited for the next issue, and I suggested Jim Rugg to do a cover for that. Got hold of him, talked to him, and he was happy to do it. We paid him. He did the cover. Everyone was happy with it, and we released it by telling people it existed the day it came out.
Yeah.
Which made some people very excited. It made some people furious. There were assumptions from other retailers that this was something that Image had done for us and hadn't done for them. We didn't break kayfabe. We didn't say what was happening. We didn't explain it ourselves. And it was a thing that came out that excited people. I think I sold out of my initial allotment of them day one, and wound up trading some of you other guys some back issues for more. It was something that worked. It was something that I didn't really mess with. I had done one store exclusive cover before that on Adventure Time #1. I was actually the one guy who knew Adventure Time was going to be what it was, and the only store in the country that had them for months because of that. And that was my one venture into it at all before this, but it was part of what made me know that this could work. Basically it was a shared store exclusive that was secret. There's the second in My Little Pony.
Speaking of My Little Pony and sowing confusion in the market, you villain. What are you gonna? What's exactly. Poor little kid might have bought this issue twice. I like Derpy on the cover, and what happened? You just gouged mommy and daddy $3.99 for a comic they already bought, pal.
That's we did like Cal mentioned in my store and told people when they were buying multiple copies of the same thing. So I think there's a level of responsibility that can go with it for sure. You called it a grift, fair enough. It was a way to sell the same comic. It's manufactured rarity, but the way we innovated in this, and it's weird to say that this is an innovation, was to get covers that people would want. And we knew artists. I knew artists. Eventually, after doing a few issues of these, I took over as a kind of an unofficial art director on Ghost Variant, where I would work with artists. I didn't do that with all of them. I know Cal arranged for the really great Darwin Cook cover you're showing there.
Who wouldn't want this? This is where I went into it and I go like, this variant thing stinks, but man, I want that. That's really cool. I want that.
Trying to make something that's desirable, and then for the retailer, it was exclusive to. There was like 25 stores who were part of this or so, and it did give you something which a lot of retail is looking for these days, something unique, something that is not that. That's one aspect of the variant is that it can give you something special, but that's not. That's one kind of variant.
But it was incredibly polarizing. As someone who is not involved with it, there were a lot of retailers like me who were outraged by it because some of the same people who had shot down the idea of doing a shared variant cover like this through Comics Pro were deeply involved in doing this outside of Comics Pro, involving retailers who were some of the others who were also shooting down the same idea at Comics Pro. In other words, it came to look to a lot of retailers like this isn't good for everybody else, but it's really good for us. And I'm not saying that was intention. That's the way it was perceived by a lot of people who said, wait, you were telling us this was bad not too long ago, and now you're doing this, but you kept it a secret. which made it look even worse. I became a part of another one of these shared variant groups that came into existence because stores felt like they had to. Suddenly the Phantom variants were born to compete with the Ghost variants because it was the same reason why stores went exclusive with Capital and with Diamond once Marvel went exclusive. Nobody liked it. Everybody felt like they had to. When I have a store 15 miles away from me that's carrying a variant I can't, the only way I can compete is try to combine with other retailers and do the same thing. So
it's nice that
all
you think you're
in the pool at the same time, basically.
I like your enthusiasm there.
I thought it was hilarious. And the whole idea that there was this Ghost variant and then the Phantom variant coming out, I'm sorry, does that not smack of just like Shazam and Superman and Marvel Man and just like all the things, imitations?
It spawned a bunch of other.
Early on, we might sell 20 copies of the regular cover and 75 copies of the Phantom variant because we were the only store that had it. I knew when we were doing it, it was still bad for comics. It was good for us because we had to have a competitive playing ground that equaled to the store across town that was carrying the Ghost variants. It was the only way we could compete and not be left out. At the same time, I knew it was a crappy move for comic books. It hurt the industry as a whole.
I'm gonna take a little devil's advocate on this.
We wrecked it.
I'm gonna play devil's advocate for a second and say that I think it caused you to up your game and look for other ways to promote your store, even if it was like competing on the same level, but like it caused you to try something you wouldn't have done.
But also
to work with customers in the industry.
But so tell me though, elaborate on that, Cliff. It's bad for the industry because
suddenly we have seeded the ground for this whole I have to chase variants through multiple stores at multiple places in the country. We've seen it go to excess with variants for the wedding issue of Batman, the famous wedding that never took place, where stores competed by coming up with custom covers, 3,000 copies of a book, the market for which was largely destroyed for many of them by the announcement ahead of time there really wasn't going to be a wedding after all. Stores, our customers trying to find all the best variants for Wonder Woman 750 only discovered that the artist did the best variants for their own websites or for their local store that they favored, so they gave them this incredible triptych variant while the cover that same artist did for the rest of the stores was just a mediocre standard pinup sort of cover.
Okay. I mean, sounds to me like fans getting excited and hungry and looking around and being excited about their products. Maybe some frustration could come of that. Callum, why don't you tell me, I don't know, what's the flip side of that take if they're gone?
Cliff makes some really good points, but we have to remember that we're talking about 80 different kinds of things that, Entertainment Weekly comes out with Game of Thrones issue, and New York gets Cersei, and LA gets Arya Stark, and Atlanta gets Ned Stark, and that makes collectors have to write to their friends to try and find the other covers. That's always going to happen. With some variant covers, what we would call store exclusives, you're trying to make something that either appeals to the collectors, or in some cases it's just to make something interesting. We've done Archie comics where they mention the local, convention that's going on. Or we've done Doctor Who covers where Doctor Who is on the Halifax waterfront. And it's not meant to be a, chase variant for people, but it's something that when you get walk-in traffic from tourists, they say, I recognize Doctor Who, but why is there the lighthouse behind it? Why do I see the Halifax Bridge behind this? And it's a great souvenir. So that kind of variant cover as well. And then there's, of course,
many of us probably did the Godzilla cover from IDW where he's stomping in your store.
Yes. There's lots of good.
Every store who was willing to do it, and the buy-in was fairly low for that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so there's lots of possibilities with variants that they can be, exciting and interesting. I think that's what we tried to do with the Ghost variant. One of the key elements, as Andrew mentioned, was the secrecy, because Robert Kirkman, I think, kind of stole our thunder doing it for Die, making it a total surprise for that comic to come out. Because when was the last time you were surprised in comics? There's the internet has given us so much good stuff, but it also has kind of ruined a lot of surprises. So adding in a little element of surprise can be fun when people see different covers available and they're like, oh, I didn't know this was coming. But these days, you kind of know in advance what is coming. The difficulty can come in on our part where we can't even communicate to the consumer that, no, we can't get that cover. When Marvel shows 5 different covers for an issue of FF, and they never mention in the solicitation that one of them is a 1 in 500 or a 1 in 1,000, I'm sure every store has had, a good customer come in and say, I'd love to get this one. And you have to be the bearer of bad news, saying it would cost me $500 to get that because I have to order, 200 copies to get one of them for you. So, when we're talking about variants, it really matters on what kind you're talking about. It's a whole different kettle of fish.
Right. Again, so the main thing we brought, other than the secrecy, was that these things were well done. Mm-hmm. And I'm not going to say it was great for the industry or that any variant cover is great for the industry, but people were doing this before we were. They had exclusive covers. They were just crap, and ours were good. And if the fact that we actually had the ability to understand who to put on a comic and were willing to pay them to do it makes us worse than the guy who paid $25 in store credit to a guy that lived in town, then okay, so be it. But I don't think it does. I don't think that makes us any worse. I think that just makes us better at it.
So let's talk about another wrinkle in this, a similar one. So we've got the store variants. I participated in that. I got a Spider-Man, Amazing Spider-Man with a Hijinks logo on the cover of it, and I thought that was one of the best marketing materials I ever invested in. It was a great program. I thought it was fantastic. But let's talk about sort of like, I don't know, there are companies that seem to exist solely for the purpose of creating these things, hyping them, working. This is the shady side. I don't want to say it's unethical or bad, but maybe you guys do. So Cliff, tell me why it's unethical or bad, or shed a little light on maybe how the economics of that.
I think some stores perhaps they see the variant cover as the avatar of their industry, offering them boundless opportunities to create these variants. But in many cases, the variants that they're turning out are crap variants for crap books. And I'm amazed that at least one of those companies, not only do they produce a lot of pornographic variants, because I had a customer who wanted one of those variants, and we will not put them on the shelves, we ordered it for him. I was amazed to discover when he pointed out to me that they actually have variant interiors where some of the interiors are much more pornographic than the regular version of the book. That they actually draw it so they can show all the genitalia in the version with the extreme covers. It's like there's an awful lot of effort that goes for a book that I don't even think I know of any store that orders one copy of every cover, plus ordering multiples of these covers. But they seem to have found an industry. I am just amazed that they can eat up page after page of a previous catalog for a product that most stores order none or 1 or 2 of. And I think it hurts the industry because it is just a cover churn. Some of the smallest companies where I can't sell half their books, they will offer 5, 7, 8, 12, 15, 26 different versions of a cover.
And the economics of that confused me so much. Like, I get it from a publisher point of view that it doesn't cost a lot to add another cover, and it lets you increase your print run. So economically, that makes a lot of sense to me.
These days, it does. Because of the sort of digital presses that can run now, it is possible to do like print runs of 200, 300, and it's stopping the press for a little bit, changing a couple of plates, and going from there. So it can be very versatile that way. It still just takes up so much space in the ordering catalog, and there's just so much clutter.
Yes.
It makes it very confusing, and sometimes you think that confusion, in the case of like Dynamite and some other publishers like that, it's almost like they're trying to make it confusing because then you accidentally order the same thing twice. So at least in Dynamite's case, they are open order in most cases. So when someone asks for a specific cover, it's like, yes, I can order it. The difficulty can come in with those mixed things is when you have 3 copies of Green Hornet on the rack, or whatever, and someone comes in saying, I'm looking for that comic, but I wanted the other cover.
Yes.
I have 3 on the shelf, but you want me to order something that I don't have in stock. So that, that can just cause frustration, but also, what are you supposed to do? In many cases, we've got to order it for them so we can bring it in and make the sale. Meanwhile, I chose wrong on whatever cover I thought was going to be the popular one.
And frankly, yeah, you lost money on that sale to make money on that customer over a long period and keep them happy.
And one other factor that shows up sometimes here, Titan comics run into this problem. Their variants are usually open order, which is fine. They don't ship all the various covers on the same week. So we have a customer who's looking for the Sid Mead cover for a book cover, and it comes in 3 weeks later than all the other covers. They, meanwhile, have assumed that they missed it in our store, so they ordered it somewhere because they don't understand why a publisher can't ship every cover on the same day. They said, oh, darn, the Sid Mead cover is sold out at Cliff's store. Let me just order it online. And then we get it, and we said, we got it in there. And said, oh, I've already ordered it somewhere. I thought you guys had sold out of it. It is that tough problem, and we've seen this happening not just with Titan, but more and more recently. We've had publishers where the A cover comes in and the B cover comes in a week or two later, or the C or the D, but we're not getting all the covers at the same time. And if the cover you're missing is the one you ordered 80% of your order on, it creates real confusion for your customer base.
Right. Andrew Neal. So the next copy of Meeting Comics, the next cover, let's say I go in and I say, hey man, I want 500 custom covers with my bottle on the cover, right? The answer is yes, right?
Absolutely. Prepay. You got it.
But honestly, economically, why wouldn't you? Is there a compelling reason why a publisher wouldn't go for that?
I can't imagine one. Look, these create confusion. Yes, these are. It makes everything tougher as far as ordering mainstream comic, but it's one of a million things that are making it tougher right now. Honestly, I do think these are an issue overall. I do think they're a problem. I don't think they're much more of a problem than literally everything mainstream comics is doing right now. And it's easy for me to say this because I sold my store and I'm not a retailer anymore. But I think the answer to this is learn how to sell different comics. If you're eaten up with the fact that Marvel, DC, Image, Boom, on down through Titan and Boundless and all that are confusing the market, learn to sell something else. Learn to sell the books from Fantagraphics, from Drawn and Quarterly, from Ad House. Learn to sell a different type of comic, because if you're so focused on this one thing and it's making your life hard, it's time to change, because the industry is stupid. The industry is bad. The industry is confusing. It's set up in that way. Again, it's easy for me to say I'm out of it. I was lucky, to sell my store at the exact right time, before everything collapsed in on itself. So
there's no wrong time to sell a comic book store, Andrew. Believe me, I can tell you that. I
know it's hard. Yeah, we're the 2 people in the world who've sold a comic book store instead of just grinding it up into dirt to live inside. It's tough. It's really tough, and I understand that.
But
and I love people.
If I walked into a grocery store and said, I'm looking for a poblano pepper. I really like poblano peppers. And they said, you really need to be buying Anaheim peppers. They're better than poblanos. I like the color on them more. Their flavor is a little bit better. I said, that's fine. I'd rather have the Anaheim. No, how about jalapenos? You need to be trying. I don't want my grocery store telling me I need to be trying to buy something else than the produce I came in there for. I will be glad to open my customers' eyes to the wide range of books we carry. But if that guy wants a Marvel comic, I'm doing a disservice to him if I'm trying to talk him into buying something else because Marvel has. Yeah.
I'm not saying that. I'm saying let that guy go. Let that guy go. You don't have to make every person happy. and you can't.
No,
And
but
if you
my goal
spend
is
all day
my goal is to find the
Well,
comics.
wait a minute, Cliff. To extend your analogy a little bit, though, what if I went in, right, and the Apple people are like, look, we're putting out new stickers on all of our apples, collector stickers, and so now you got to order, and people really want every kind of apple. I want that selection, so now all of my room is taken up with these apples, and I got no more room for mangoes, and I got no room for my specialty fruits and stuff. I feel like shelf space is always going to be limited, and the proliferation of SKUs and covers and just catalog space and mental space for retailers who are ordering this stuff is not insignificant. I just don't know how you get around that. I don't know what the best way to solve that problem is.
I mean, you have to choose, and you can choose to order 10,000 copies of the same thing with 10,000 different covers, or you can order 10,000 things. And obviously they're different. You can't sell the same thing to everyone. Not everyone is the same.
Right.
And if your entire market is the people who want to buy these variant covers, then I'm sorry, that's not actually you serving the medium. That's you serving one type of thing, which is a choice that you can make. Absolutely, you can choose to just do this, but it's like there are ways to make money selling comics.
Oh yeah. Thankfully,
I did.
I've been doing that for a while. I understand.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No one's
Exactly.
forced ordering anything. One of the issues I find is the transparency from the publishers and the distributors to the consumer, because
Yes.
we have to seem like the bad guy when we're saying that's a 1 in 10, that's a 1 in 50, and we can't deliver it to you. As I was talking earlier before we started about the Marvel hip hop variants that I thought were both a great critical media success and a horrible failure at the sales level.
Please elaborate a little bit on that, Callum.
I think it was Axel Alonso who was the big hip hop fan, and he was well connected with some folks in the industry, and he got the okay to do these great series of hip hop record covers spoofed as comic books. So, Miles Morales had one, Spider-Man, Squirrel Girl, everybody had one. And they were pitched and they got great feedback in a lot of the music industry. So they're all over the place. You saw them posted everywhere. The problem was not one of the press releases mentioned how stores actually order them. They just said, go and ask your local retailer. But every hip hop variant had different thresholds. Some of them you had to order 150% of the previous issue of X-Men now tied to Squirrel Girl, or vice versa, or the Moon Girl in Devil Dinosaur was tied to something else. And I put together a big chart. Heidi ran it on Comics Beat that at least gave a little bit of insight to explain why some stores would have to have this comic at $10 on the day it shipped, because they had to order 3 extra copies per every one of those in order to get it, that are sitting on the shelf. Like, I don't need an extra 30 copies of whatever title in order to get the 10 copies of the cool cover people are asking for. And it never gets out in the Marvel press releases. And every time I receive one, I reply to it saying, why don't you mention how you get these covers? David Gabriel shares on Facebook many times, here's a cool cover for an upcoming issue of Black Cat or Black Widow or X-Men. But and it starts to get shared all over the place, but doesn't mention that, oh, that's a 1 in 50. Several artists I've spoken to, they feel horrible after they've worked on a variant cover. They show it on their Instagram. Everyone's very excited. We've gotten many requests for it. And then we find out, oh yeah, it's a 1 in 100. We can't even get that. Yes. So it's like, where is the value in that? I mean, value just in. Like,
so is the answer labeling on the comic itself to explain the variant?
In the title or in the solicitation would be useful. At least in most cases, many publishers will say, here's 3 covers. It's A, B, and C. Other ones will do, this is a 1 in 10, this is a 1 in 50. That information kind of needs to get out to the consumers. I don't know why some publishers hide that.
To tell you the truth, I have a theory about that. It's
they
that
want the demand to go up. They want to get everybody excited thing.
To me, it's that the publishers view the comic store owner as somebody who just wants to get that quick flip and get a lot of action and quickly capitalize and make these things. And so they're designing their incentives with that type of dealer in mind, not realizing that type of dealer, most of those guys went out of business and are not still like the core of their industry.
That market has quickly faded down to just a small group of diehards. The trend that has been most baffling to me that I've seen recently is, as we all know, they began doing sketch covers a while back. A blank cover, usually on a white uncoated stock, that they can get an artist. You can buy that blank cover and have an artist sketch on it and do a cover for you, or you can do your own cover. Then some publishers started wisely offering colored sketch variants, the yellow sketch variant for a doomsday clock, something like that. Somehow someone decided that a colored piece of paper with a logo on it should be a 1 in 200 variant on some of these books. And I'm thinking, there's not even art here. You spent nothing to create this, and you're telling people that who wanted to buy this, get sketches at cons originally, that now they're supposed to be spending a huge amount of money to get a 1 in 200 variant to qualify for this. I thought it totally lost the purpose of that style of a variant cover.
That to me is the ultimate kind of insulting variant to me.
Yes.
That could also have been just that we wanted to put one in and they didn't have one available. You know, a few of these do seem like, oh, you know, we need to have something for this and we just don't have something.
Ah, right.
There's a few.
Maybe an artist didn't deliver or something and they decided to.
Those variants were solicited in the previews catalog up front, so they knew, and they even had the art for that variant.
All right.
Colored block,
yeah.
But it is disturbing because it does feel like it's really taking advantage of that diehard customer who quits being a diehard customer because he can't for that book because he can't afford every version of the variant now. It's too expensive, so he starts cutting back. And we may lose him off that title entirely. So the customer can get frustrated. I'm not opposed to the idea of variants. I collect vinyl record albums. I have the same album on regular vinyl, and I will pick it up on a red vinyl or a clear vinyl, something like that. I enjoy that. I enjoy the Star Wars soundtrack album with the holographic vinyl where an image of one of the ships floats above it when it's being played at the proper speed. I thought that was incredible. I was willing to pay money for that. So I don't think the variant is bad if the variant has an inherent value to the customer. But I think we take advantage of that customer if the publisher oversaturates that market and makes the customer feel like I can't afford to buy the things I want for this book. So now I'm frustrated with the whole series and I'm just going to give up and buy something else instead.
Yeah, I think the burnout factor can be. And that's one that people cite often, but sometimes I go like, you know, it's supply and demand. As soon as that burnout happens, the peak happens, and then that thing will not be a thing anymore. I say we wouldn't have variants now if people ultimately in the end didn't like them, just like you're saying, Cliff. There is a market for that.
Idea, but they don't enjoy the cost that's now built into it. And how many of you guys have had the condition customer who is inspecting to see if he thinks that's going to qualify as a 9.8 or a 10.0,
right.
And got him the variant he wanted. You ordered the 100 copies of the book because he wanted it, but he doesn't want that copy. He wants you to get him a better copy. And you try to explain to Diamond that there's this minor, there's a slight rounding of the upper left-hand corner that you can detect with this jeweler's loop. See if you look right here. They don't see where that's a damaged problem.
Yeah, I was in fact happy to tell those customers no. I didn't do it. I didn't do that. I think that's a waste of time to try to chase those.
Right.
You know, it wasn't a part of my business plan. It wasn't something I was willing to do. If I had a thing, I would sell it to them. You know, it is a choice. It is in fact a choice. And both Cal and Cliff have said you have to get this. You don't. I know it sucks. I know it sucks to not have a thing that somebody wants, but it's a highly specific, speculator-driven, like, thing. You're in a speculator-driven industry at this point, and you know you can.
Well, this is what's very interesting to me, guys. Okay, so I spent the last 10 years after I sold my store thinking about it a lot. What I did right, what I did wrong, decisions I made. Andrew and Neil were roughly in the same kind of class of new type of comic book stores that came around along the same time.
Yeah.
We looked at the market. People looked at the market at that time, and they went one of two ways usually. They went the collectibles and pop culture type route, or they went the bookstore route, right? Andrew and I tended to go the bookstore route and to eschew collectibles. I said, man, back issues are a scam. I got rid of them. Collectible comics are for reading. They are not for collecting. I went binary with that decision. I maintain that was a big mistake in my own business model, that it's not an either or, but it's a how you embrace collectability.
Absolutely. I agree with that. Absolutely.
So, Andrew, if you had to do it all over again, God forbid I get PTSD thinking about it, but if you did it again, what would you do different in that regard, if anything?
I had added back issues back into the store by the time I sold it. The market changes. It reacts. Mostly I was ahead of the market. Mostly I did really well. I would have delegated more and not done as much, but I wouldn't have changed the way I did things. I certainly made mistakes. Everybody makes mistakes in business. But it all worked out for me. I can't complain about the way it went. Maybe I would have started a hair earlier, bringing back issues back in. But honestly, the way I did it was not primarily collectible based. The only things I sold at Guide back issue wise were key issues. Everything else was a flat $3, $4, $5.
Which I think is the model. I think that's the model. In a day when a new comic costs $4 anyway, what does what does a $4.50 back issue mean? It's meaningless, right?
Exactly. And I mean, the point is you have to change with it. The real issue is that these days you have to change every 10 minutes. I got out of it right as that was starting to be the case. I still talk to a lot of retailers and I see the issues they're having with the industry, and it's not stuff they asked for, but it's what they've been handed, and it's tough. And absolutely, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, my biggest problem is that when I decided, like, okay, I'm going to be a specialty bookstore, and that's my model, is that then there's very little special about what a bookstore can carry. Like bookstores can carry what I carry. So what is the hedge? There's two hedges in a comic store: collectability to some degree, but also I think urgency of the periodical. I used to be anti-floppy, anti-pamphlet, pro-graphic novel, but I've totally turned around. The weekly comics fan is like the forefront. Those are the guys that are consuming it first. They need it first. They really are into the story the most, and they really drive where it all goes. Callum, I want to know. Sorry, Callum, go ahead.
In the record store, you're going to have the folks who are there on Tuesday for new release day. They're the hardcore. You're always going to have that. And comic books are always going to have like people who want to follow them, and they're soap operas. They're great stories. They're our own mythology in many cases. But then there's also just slice of life stuff. So like even when you're talking about comics, it's a dozen different genres within. Certainly the most popular one that we're seeing is the superhero that weekly new chapter comes out. You want to find out what's happening to Spider-Man or whatever. But when it comes to the variant cover problems, that's a whole different avenue, I think. One of the things is, as Cliff was saying earlier, and Andrew, about trying to service the customer who wants all the covers. One of the issues we're running into is just the artist fans, the guys who are and girls who are fans of J. Scott Campbell or Nick Bradshaw or Steve McNiven. Like they just follow the artist. They want to follow that style. And then they follow the artist and find out that there's a cool cover that they can't get, or we can't get for them, but there's nowhere in that information out there that tells them that in advance. We have to be that bearer of bad news.
What about those back of the book variant companies that you see, Jimmy J maybe, or some of these other guys that seem to exist? Yeah. Or okay, obviously. Sorry, that's the elephant in the room of that, right? Dynamic forces. Are they still a thing? Even I don't. I don't have a shop
They
anymore.
still do,
So.
like, timed ones
Still
and-
does Dynamic Forces as along with doing Dynamite Comics. He's still up in the Dynamic Forces stuff, but a lot of what he offers now, Nick is doing the same things that a lot of retailers do. If you take a look, he will often create a custom cover, a Dynamic Forces cover of a DC or a Marvel title by buying the 3,000 copies, just like a store can. And then he will offer some of those for sale on his site and some for sale in previews. He will do Dynamic Forces. Much more of the Dynamic Forces stuff now seems to be other companies' books that he's creating covers for to sell through Dynamic Forces. His own limited covers for his Dynamite line ends up in the Dynamite section instead.
And then those companies, as part of their business model, create it. Maybe they get some signed. Maybe they find some and grade them. They sell them at different price points and models to their own customer base, who obviously are into that kind of thing, right? They're following that artist, and that's a thing that they are willing to plunk down some dough for.
They feel there is, and they're finding some market for it. Maybe it's also they used to be able to find that market at conventions. Some of the smaller companies that you were talking about, like in the back of previews, they're creating, here's a new series. It's virtually unknown. Why is there 3 covers and one of them is a 1 in 10 or 1 in 50? And then you see them at a convention, and it's because they're selling them there at a reduced price because they've kind of manufactured a collectible. Oh, it's a $50 book at your local shop if you can even get it, but we have it here and it's much cheaper. And it's direct sales for them. And that's not in every case. There's also, convention variants. You could do a whole show on just that.
Yeah.
If there's cool number ones. Every publisher right now, they're trying to sell their WonderCon variant because WonderCon was canceled. And, we've got 1,000 copies of whatever that we
just wait all the San Diego Con variants started showing up in a little while. But, now, the variant program that we haven't mentioned that I thought was in many ways the most invigorating new addition to the marketplace was DC's program a while back, where when they did their variants, when they started going to the art, almost virgin art variant, where you only have a small title identifier, and then they started printing some of those variants on cardstock covers, better paper for $1 more. So you're getting something that's more art focused on a higher quality paper so that it doesn't get damaged as easily. And you're putting a cover price. This is $1 higher cover price for the better paper and the artist that you want, whether it's Art Germ or whether it's Josh Middleton or somebody. I found a significant number of our customers knowing up front they were going to pay $1 more. They would opt for that cover because that artist was worth $1 more to them. And I thought that is a great business model. The customer understands up front what they're going to have to pay for it. They're willing to pay more. They accept the fact they get a better product as a result. I applauded DC for that program and wish that more people had embraced it.
That's often options, though. Like that's here's an option, and DC is usually very good about here's the cover art. They've slipped up many times in the past, but here's the information you need, and here's the options you have. So certainly it helps with pre-ordering. However, the retailers do run into the problem of, there's 2 covers. I usually sell 15 or 10 or 5 off the rack. Which cover do you go for? Myself, I'm always going to go for the one that has the logo at the top. The folks who did Isola for Image, they were showing some beautiful cover art. And I said, when you're doing variants, because they often would offer 2 covers for each issue, try and put the logo at the top for one, because that's going to help it sell off the rack.
Right.
And I was so glad when DC moved on their near virgin covers, moved the logo from the bottom to the top.
Just a little thing that at least lets people find the book.
Very interesting, because of the limited space in every store, any store, you have cascading waterfall type displays, right? And the bottom half of any book is not even guaranteed to be shown.
Now, let me mention 2 other variants, quote unquote, that I remember very well. From one of them takes us back to about late 82, early 83. There was a Moon Knight cover, and I don't remember which issue it was. The cover it was a Bill Sienkiewicz cover, black background, Moon Knight. Some of the copies have a sort of a midnight blue background. Now I understand why. when they're printing the comics, they are simultaneously running on two machines in tandem. If the color balance is off on one of those machines, you get the blue coming through predominant. The black ink wasn't as strong. I remember an intense interest of customers coming in looking for the blue Moon Knight as opposed to the black Moon Knight. We had the blue Moon Knight and the black. They were a 50-50 mix, more or less, pretty much every alternating copy. But I remember customers going through to find the blue Moon Knight. I will also mention there was a time in 1983 where Marvel filled some orders for a G.I. Joe with Canadian copies because they didn't have the American copies. And we got, it may have been a little later than that, but we got copies that instead of having a 60-cent price on the cover had a 75, or maybe instead of having 50, they had a 60. I remember the excitement from one cover said, look, the price has already gone up on this book. And there were so many things I wanted to explain that I couldn't. I just let him go for that variant right there. And then, of course, there was the Venom #1 variant. It was a foil cover, but about 1 out of 100, the foil press wouldn't hit the cover right, so it would just be a red and black cover with no foil on it. There were people who were spending $50, $75, $100 for the no foil variant, which was really just a misprint.
Right. Well, that's where I go. The DC cardstock variants, it is cool. It's $1 more. Like as a retailer, even you get a choice. If you only want to stock one. Maybe you want the higher cover price and make that extra whatever 50 cents. That's great. But then when you get into like cardstock and the type, it just reminds me of the chromium age, the gilded age, and all that stuff. And we really don't want to go back to that stuff, right?
It's still going with
cardstock and tissue paper is much better than the difference between all the various the foils and everything. A better paper quality, I think, is better than just saying, and we're adding chromium to it or something like that. Valiant gave us the extra. I never understood how the Valiant variant program worked. You can order these books fully returnable, and if you order 250, we're going to give you a cover on glass. Well, that's a great idea, but you're creating this very expensive variant, and we don't have to keep any of those books for it. Basically, they're saying, if you will loan us money for 90 days, we're going to give you this incredible cover you can sell for $200 or $300. We had customers who pre-ordered every one of those, and we would do it, but I don't know how many money for Valiant.
Never count, or never go. Keep in mind the laziness of a retailer who like would just not return it and just forget about it or whatever. Like there's a significant amount of people.
Yeah. There's another variant style I wanted to bring up that it is picking on Marvel. I'm sorry, but it makes again no sense to me when they will do these theme months of Thor or Black Panther, or it's a meeting comics month 1 month, and every cover has meeting comics characters on the cover, even though they're not in the issue. Why is there a Captain America on the Captain Marvel comic when he doesn't appear in there at all?
Clearly, they're looking for a line-wide bump, right?
Yeah. But be a little more upfront about it.
I agree.
And do you guys find, does anybody ever say, sorry, Andrew, go ahead.
I was going to say what it comes down to is every retailer says, boy, variants sure are messing up the market, but this one works. This one, and it's the one that they got. It's the one that they sold well. It's the one that worked for them. There's a level of hypocrisy built into it for everyone, I think. I mean, I thought variant covers were bad for the most part. I did the Adventure Time one. I knew it would work really well for me. I did Ghost variant. Sure. And I made money off those. And for the most part, I didn't bother with most of them because I thought they were a scam. I thought they encouraged unhealthy purchasing habits in customers. I thought they confused customers. But I can't blame anyone for bringing in a thing that they can sell. I really can't. It's how you make your money. But I think for retailers to say variant covers are bad except for the one that I was good at selling, which is what a lot of arguments boil down to.
Yeah.
And yes, okay, there's a difference between a 1 in 1,000 cover and an incentive cover where you have to order the regular thing and order what you want cover. I understand all that, but it's all designed to drive up the print run for the publisher, and it works. You know, all the retailers play.
Okay. Great point. So I do want to bring up this point, and I want to ask the whole panel about it. So the other thing that this does to me is it distorts the sales numbers on titles which are already in free fall and decline over the years, right? And now, for instance, if you look at a Batman, now that you've got two separate SKUs with a different cover price for the same book, how do you really know how many people are reading Batman right now? You know what I mean?
Well, we sell very few. We have virtually no customers who buy two covers. They buy one or the other. Good example, the book, The Terrifics. It had variant covers, the two different DC variants for a while, and then they collapsed it down to a single cover. We ordered the exact number of copies with the single cover that we were ordering with two. Our customers were just picking one cover or the other. I like the fact that they had a choice of what they wanted, and that there was no hoop to jump through for them to get it, but they didn't mind going to the single choice. So in this case, if DC's goal was to boost their numbers, it did not work in my store because our single cover sales remained the same. But I do like if all is equal and I can offer a customer a choice of the cover they would like to pre-order, and if we would like to decide to gamble on a few extras of one cover over the other for the wall, depending on which one appeals to me the most, I'll do it. I find that for most of those covers for DC, we order very few extras of that variant cover beyond what customers have asked for. We're aware it's going to sell out quickly, but the logo cover seems to be the easier one for the casual reader to identify.
Callum, is that what you find in your stores? Are most people buying one or the other, or is there enough of a hardcore that wants both?
No, most of it is strictly like they're just reading the comic. We do have a few collectors who are also, I don't think they're actually dealing, but they want to. You know, it's like, oh, I'm getting two Batmans because one I put away and one I read, or they start getting the other cover. So there's all kinds of different collectors. You know,
right. So to me, this is where I come down. This is where I start to become anti-variant from a retailer perspective, because it's more shelf space. It's another line item. It's another hassle. It's worrying about one cover versus another in a market that just can't afford that much extra thought process.
For us, it's not always more shelf space.
Well, I think what Cal and Cliff are saying for their stores is obviously true, but there's a difference between sell-in and sell-through. They're talking about what is selling in their store. I thought you, Dan, were probably talking about bumping the total sales numbers. And when you have a store that has a customer who wants the 1 in 100 cover, and the store's ordering 50, and they're willing to go to 100 because the guy will pay it, that's doubled the amount of comics that are sold to that store. Mm-hmm. So, you know, and if you're profitable selling that thing, great. You can trash these things. Whatever, or you can keep them forever. You can chop them up. You know,
there's my logo on this cover, and those become free comic book day books the next year.
But okay. So, given the choice, then, would you rather just pay $50 for a rare variant comic like wholesale price, or would you rather have to jump through hoops and get extra product that you could sell or you might not sell or whatever? Callum, what if you had the choice between those two? What would you rather do?
Just put the money into making good comics. You know, like having the variety is sometimes counterproductive. I do sometimes wish we could analyze the numbers from some of the publishers to see if you put that same amount of money that you're paying for cover art into paying the writers and artists, making the actual comics better might be really exciting. You know, just to make the actual product improve rather than spending whatever they're paying for 5 different covers for the same comic.
It's not the elephant in the room here, Cliff. What?
I mean, I wholeheartedly agree that I would much rather, if they offered it to me as a simple either-or alternative, you can have better content or more covers. I want better content every day of the week. And I think coming out of the situation the industry is in now, the focus has to be on better content when we come back. We're going to need to give, I think many of our customers are going to come back with tighter budgets than they had before all this began. And I think that because of that, we're going to have to give them more self-contained entertainment out of each comic, and we're going to have to take the focus away from the variant cover because the customers, fewer customers, are going to have the money to chase variants that they used to have. But no, I agree. If it is an either or, we should do that. Now, you asked a question a while ago. Is it better to just offer the variant at $50 retail?
Yeah.
Dynamite does that. As you know, Nick has started putting some of his best covers, and I can't remember the term he uses for them, or his artisan or whatever it is, but he has some covers listed at a $50 list price. I have a couple of customers who very much like that. They know what the price is. They know what they're getting. Some of them order. If it's an Adam Hughes cover, they like Adam Hughes. They're willing to splurge for the $50. I think that's a great business model. Everyone's on the same page. Every store can get that book for $50.
Mm-hmm. Guys, here's a word of sense in the comments. This is my comment of the night so far from J.K. McGill, my comic book mentors, and Svengali. The bottom line is they're trying to milk more out of the same aging, kind of shrinking fan base, right? And what you guys are saying is right, that it's when we get back to entertainment as the core focus and get away from the gimmicks and the other stuff is when we're really going to be able to thrive and succeed again.
Entertainment hasn't been the core focus with or without gimmicks for a long time.
Yes.
Captain America's not even a character anymore. He's a mascot for the movies. He's a mascot for the T-shirts that you buy at Target. He's a mascot for Happy Meals or whatever. They don't care. Marvel and DC don't care what those characters are doing in the comics. The comics are a farm for properties, you know, and to think that maybe good is an option, except occasionally by accident at this point, is very optimistic, and I applaud you for that optimism. So that's why I love you, Cal, is your positive outlook.
Well, I think what J.K. McGill was also saying was that old sales nut of they're trying to sell more to the same audience, and that's kind of the crux of the variant covers. In some cases, they're trying to get more people to buy the same thing twice, rather than find more people to buy the product.
Yeah.
And it's easier to sell the same thing to that audience rather than find a new audience. And that's something, I mean, we've all got to do, but I do wish some of the sales forces who work for some of the big publishers were trying to make some attempts in that regard as well.
And I think early on, the incentive variant cover might have had some of that in mind. I think early on, some of the publishers would say, we're going to offer a 1 in 100 incentive on a book that we really think you can sell a lot of copies of to get them into your store. But I think today, in today's market, the variant cover no longer serves that goal. And that's where I think publishers de-emphasizing the variant cover and emphasizing returnability. We think this book is so good, we want you to get more in your store. And if you order these, you get them returnable. That is how we reach the reader as opposed to trying to feed off the same market, a market of collectors only. Returnability is the tool for expanding readership. Variant covers are the tool for expanding dollars from a shrinking audience.
Yeah, I think that sums it up very well. Guys, I want to ask one last question, and I'm going to come around the horn for predictions, right? So, you know, at the end of the show, I always like to get a prediction from the panelists. It could be about variant covers if you want it to be, or about the industry in general, or about your store, or heck, about whatever you want. Here's a question I want to ask. I don't know if any of you fellas caught the Hibbs Boyle Field live stream that we did. It was a lot of fun. A lot of great stuff came up. Joe Field talked about the idea of a Marvel DC crossover and talked about it being like an event, a serialized event in comics format to bring people into stores after this event. We talked about maybe with an increased discount as a sort of benefit for retailers, maybe not, whatever. I just want to go around. Let's start with, we got to start with curmudgeon Andrew Neal, and we'll end with Ray of Sunshine, Caleb Johnston. Andrew, is a Marvel DC crossover going to save the DM?
No, it's not going to happen. And if it does, it'll be terrible.
Yes, that's just the answer I was hoping for. Right? Cliff Biggers, what do you think about that?
It will not save the industry, but I think if it's done well on the level of an Avengers Justice League crossover or something like that, I think it could be an amazingly strong seller. I think books like Doomsday Clock showed that if you deliver a product that readers are genuinely excited about reading, they will show up for it, and it is it rises everybody's sales ship that particular week. People are so excited to come in for that book, they pick up more stuff. A Marvel DC book would create Wednesday excitement, but I don't think it's going to happen. I hope they prove me wrong, but I think, yes, there would be benefit. No, it's not going to save the industry.
Callum?
Yeah, it's not going to happen. I mean, you're asking Disney and Warner Brothers to work together. I can't see it happen. I could see them maybe work out a Meeting Comics crossover. If they could do anything, I mean, just reprinting JLA Avengers, some of their past crossovers would be wonderful. Just giving us a fun product, but of course it would still have to be available in bookstores and all that stuff. If they could make a direct market exclusive, that'd be wonderful. But I don't think right now we make them enough money, to make it worthwhile. Why are the local comic shop day products kind of run of the mill? Because, we're not a big enough deal to make it worth their while to do something special for the direct market or the comic stores.
And it's a self-defeating program in that because the books haven't been exciting for a couple of years, fewer stores want to participate, and we get into that cycle of diminishing returns.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think in some cases the excitement has to come from the stores themselves, and we've got to try and look for new and interesting things to captivate our audiences.
Guys, I'm going to say that a Marvel DC crossover book would be the perfect thing to lure the people, the actual readers, back into the stores after this is all over. But I kind of agree with you that it seems like the odds are kind of against it from a corporate level. But I got some hope that people are working on it and talking about it and thinking about it. And just maybe there is enough vision at the top to realize that the culture that was created and inculcated in comic book shops is what led to their billions and billions of dollars in the current movie industry.
No.
That's going to be my prediction, guys. I'm going to go Pollyanna. I'm going to go give that prediction that the people at the top are going to look down and see at the bottom and say, hey, let's do a benefit to support the comic book stores. I'm probably wrong.
If there could be a golden ticket out of all this, it's that people are at home right now. They're reading their comics. They're reading their old comics, the stuff they had around, and they're seeing that, this is a great story. I really enjoy this. It wasn't because of the cover. It wasn't because of, the J. Scott Campbell or the Stanley Lau or whatever. It was because the story really moved them. And I hope that as we get out of this, it's going to make the consumers a little more, hey, I read some great stuff while I was stuck at home. That's what I'm looking for now. We need to find them some great stuff.
Okay. Cliff Biggers, give me a prediction. What are you thinking for the future?
Variant cover related or just in the future?
Sure.
Comics in general?
Like I said, whatever you want to predict, but variant cover would be nice.
Variant covers, I think, they're going to be de-emphasized over the next few years. I think the gimmick has begun to run its course. I think it's becoming less cost effective. For comics as a whole, I think when the industry comes back, they're going to need to deliver more story to keep people coming back for those issues. I think the diminished amount of money in every customer's pocket is going to make them buy the books that give them the most story for their money. And I hope that means that people start looking at content rather than covers.
Andrew Neal, prognosticate, please.
The only corporate comic company that will make a good comic in 2020 is Archie.
Oh, I love it. That's nobody was expecting that hot take, baby. I love it.
Yeah.
Callum,
do at least one great one.
Callum, predictions.
I think comics are going to continue, and in many
everybody gives that one. Wait a minute, I'm calling this right now. Nobody gets to say comics are going to keep going. We know comics are going to keep going. Callum,
Comics are done. They're over, Dan. They're over, Dan.
You're a first-time panelist, but I'm going to hold you. Make a specific prediction that I can call you on as right or wrong.
Prediction? Okay.
Yeah.
We're going to see an Aliens Predator before we see a Marvel DC.
Boom. That's a killer prediction. That is
Star Wars before we see a Marvel DC.
That's quantifiable, and we can call you on that. And I'm going to. I hope that you will come back here to the show. I hope all of you guys will come back. You guys are all terrific. You're doing, I don't want to sound Pollyanna, you're doing God's work out there in the comic shops and behind the drawing board, Andrew, because it all boils down to entertainment and escapism and fun and love of art. And there's just not enough businesses out there. What other businesses are selling art on a regular basis to people who are just hungry for it and want to read more and see more? I get inspired every day by the comics industry. Thank you guys for being a part of this.
Thank you. And read Meeting Comics.
Oh yeah. Oh please. Plugs.
Oh,
Andrew.
my God.
I'm not sure. Guys, tell us your stores and give us a little plug. This is what I always forget to do. Callum, give me a plug for your store. Where can people go to check you out?
Strangeadventures.com. We're in Halifax, Fredericton, and Dartmouth, east coast of Canada. We're northeast of Boston for most of the folks who are probably watching this. And yeah, we enjoy comics and we like to share them. Share the comic book love.
Cliff Biggers, plugs, please.
Dr. Knows Comics. We're in Marietta, Georgia, which is the northwestern suburb of Atlanta. We've been there since '77. Been doing this for a long time and plan on doing it for a lot longer.
I love it. And Andrew Neal, I'm not sure if you have anything to promote or not, but hey, yeah, tell us where we can check out.
The cat's helping. Meeting Comics, Volume 1 out from Ad House, meetingcomics.com. Do it.
Great.
Draws them in meeting.
Okay.
Yeah.
Guys, thank you so much. This has been a pleasure again. I'm trying to make Tuesdays a regular live streaming thing. You guys are all East Coast, so you guys are really great sports for doing this. I'm going to try and make it earlier if I can in the future and give stores like yours a chance, to drop Tuesday announcements if you want to or anything else. You're always welcome back.
Hey, we're the industry that never sleeps. It's okay. We can be here anytime.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you. Thanks, everybody. And, hey, thank you, Facebook and YouTube and America and the world and everybody out there who watches and supports this channel, Comic Book News, and comic shops all over this great country and this world. Guys, we're in a crazy time of global pandemic. I never thought I would say that for real, but we're in it. And this is a time when we need people the most, we're being asked to isolate ourselves from other people. So please, man, bring the people you love and bring them together and talk about things you love, like comics. That's what I'm doing. And I'm so glad you joined me. Thanks again to everybody who participated in this. Guys, we'll see you next time. Thanks.